good afternoon. I'm Julia Moody from the Princeton Review, and welcome to How to Determine Where to Apply to College. This afternoon, we'll be going through a wide variety of slides and helping you understand the college application process and how to choose where to apply to college. I'll be giving the presentation, and Emily Vaubel will be monitoring questions, and at the end of our presentation, we will answer questions. So feel free to send them throughout the meeting and know that we won't get to them until after the presentation. So welcome, and let's get going. As I said, I'm Julia Moody. I'm a college admissions counselor at the Princeton Review. My background is in admissions at both public and private schools in Los Angeles and in the East Coast. And I've worked in admissions at MIT. I also work as a pro bono financial aid counselor for families who need help. My background education-wise is I went to Cornell University in cold Ithaca, New York for my undergraduate degree. I got my certificate in college counseling from University of UCLA and went back to school later in life and got my master's in higher education from Harvard, which was an interesting experience when I was twice as old as my classmates, and I was a regular classmate at Harvard. Why counseling? First of all, I love teenagers. I love working with teenagers, getting to know them and their families. And I really love guiding students and families as they embark on this adventure of college, because college really is an adventure. It seems nerve-wracking at times, but at the end of the day, once you get there, it's all worth it. So let's get started. So first of all, we're going to start with where to start. We're going to go through how to start figuring out what college to apply to. We're going to then outline your driving criteria, and then we'll take some questions. So where to start? So first of all, you want to determine who is invested in your college application process. Is it you, your parents? Do you have grandparents who are involved? Siblings, your college counselor at school? Who is invested in this process? Who is part of this process? Who is your key group? And it's important that you have a conversation with everyone so that you know where to start, and you want to discuss your priorities, whether they're financial, whether they're location, whether they're major. It's really important to have a family discussion and a discussion with anyone else who's involved in advising you in this process. You want to reflect on campus visits, which you may have done prior to the pandemic, or you may do in the future, hopefully after the pandemic has slowed. You want to do online research and discussion about colleges with family and friends. So frequently you have family and friends who have gone to schools that you might be interested in or maybe don't know anything about, and can really learn a lot from people who have gone there. Like, I could tell you a lot about Cornell and a lot about Harvard, as well as about the schools that my children went to. Then you want to see, are there already colleges on your list? Do you have dream schools that you've always thought about applying to? Or do you have schools that you've heard about, that you have a preliminary college list that you're looking at? And you want to figure out why you're interested in these schools. Hopefully it's for more than just prestige. This is a common problem that we run into, where students build lists based on college prestige, and that is not a reason to add a college to your list. There has to be many, many more factors involved, and we'll go over them in why a college ends up on your ultimate college list. Are any family members encouraging you to apply to a particular school? So maybe your parents are encouraging you to apply to their alma mater and really want you to go there because they had such a great time. How do you feel about it? And remember, just because you're being encouraged to go to a school doesn't mean that you have to go there. You should definitely investigate it and, hear everyone out. But ultimately, it is a group decision, but you're the one who's attending the college. So it's really important that while you take other people's advice into mind, at the end of the day, you make the decision as an educated decision when you've done a lot of research. And we'll go over that. So outlining your driving criteria, which we're going to go over in the next slide. You want to write down each category title. You can do this either on a pad of paper or in a Google Doc or on your computer. Within each category, you're going to answer the questions posed and or list your preferences. And again, this will mean more when we get into the next slides. You want to categorize your driving criteria into 3 different buckets or groups: must have, nice to have, and don't need. This will really help you prioritize your criteria and help you fine-tune a school list. And then you want to rank your nice to have and don't need buckets in order of preference. And this will come, you'll understand more what I'm talking about when we get into the next slide. And also really remember, it's okay to shift your criteria as you conduct your college research, because as you dig deeper and deeper into the research process, you'll learn more about schools and you'll learn more about what you like, what you don't like. You'll learn more about the whole process and you'll learn more about yourself. So let's look at some driving criteria. So first of all, let's talk about location. Location can be a key criteria in this process. First of all, what regions of the country or the states would you like to consider? And we're talking about geographical regions. So north, northeast, east, Midwest, South, West. Are there areas of the country or are there particular states that you would like to consider? Maybe you want to consider going to college abroad, so that may work into the whole quotient as well. And then something that's frequently easier for students to tell me when I work with them than where they want to go is where they don't want to go. So frequently I'll hear, I don't want to go to school in the Midwest. I don't want to go to school in the West. So sometimes it's easier for a student to really define where they don't want to go and limit down, trim down your options that way. You want to think about how close or far you want to be from home. It's really a family decision, but it's also a decision that you have to make in terms of your independence. Because if you do what I did, I'm from Honolulu, Hawaii, and I went to Cornell, which was 5,000 miles from home. I really could not have gone much further from home. And trust me, it was a challenge. I couldn't go home for Thanksgiving. I couldn't go home for fall break because it was just too long of a trip. You want to think about how you'll travel between home and school. In my case, I had to fly. So I was very limited as to how frequently I could go home. And how often will you travel? Again, do you want to go home for Thanksgiving? Do you want to be close enough so that you can go home for a long weekend? Or do you want to be further away where you stay in school for a long weekend, or you go home with a friend or a roommate for a long weekend? So location is really important, and it's one of the first things to start thinking about and exploring in your driving criteria. And I really ask that you keep an open mind in location. And instead of ideally saying no Midwest, and I don't mean to slam the Midwest at all. I'm just saying no Midwest is, sometimes comes up, or no West. Keep your mind open and say, I prefer not to go to the Midwest or to the West or to the East. However, you may find a school that jumps out at you that is in one of those locations that you love. So location is a driving criteria, and it is something that evolves over time as you investigate your schools. Let's talk about setting. So what settings are you interested in? Students typically have very strong opinions about their settings. Urban. So urban settings, New York City, for example, would you like a defined campus or a campus that's integrated into the city? So in an urban setting, and I'll use New York as an example, Columbia University in New York is an Ivy and is literally walled in, has an identity. It's within the gated community of Columbia. You know when you're on campus, you know when you're off campus, as compared to NYU, also in New York City, that has a very open campus that meanders into the village. And in some cases, it's very difficult to tell when you're on campus and when you're off campus because there are no set boundaries for those campuses. So some students feel very strongly about wanting a campus with an identity so they know when they're on and when they're off. Others are much more flexible and really are open to a campus that meanders into the city and sort of blends into the community. Let's talk about suburban schools. How close would you like to be to an urban area? So suburban can be many things. It can be right outside of New York City, or it can be, you know, many miles away from an urban area. So suburbs can be close to a city for larger suburbs or further from a city for smaller suburbs. How close would you like to be to an urban area? And if you are close or a little further away from an urban area, do you want to have access to it by bus or by train or by car? How important is it to you to have access to an urban area if you live in a suburb or you go to school in a suburb? Frankly, most students who go to suburban universities end up staying in the town where their university is located, because there is enough to do on campus and off campus that there's not usually a real reason to go into the closer urban area. But it really depends on the student. A small town. So I live in a small town. I live in Charlottesville, Virginia, where the University of Virginia is located. And how large of a presence does the school have in the town? Here in Charlottesville, UVA has a huge presence. It doubles our population when it's in session. So the population of Charlottesville is about 47,000, and UVA, actually it doesn't double, it increases it by 50%. UVA has about 25,000 students in total, including grad students. So it adds another 50% onto the size of the population when school's in session. And businesses cater to college students, absolutely. However, when school is not in session, the businesses are still open, the businesses are still thriving. Right now, of course, it's a challenge with COVID, but even though I'm in a small town, I don't feel isolated. I don't feel like I'm missing anything because I happen to be in a college town. So something to think about is that even if you're in a small town, it will typically cater to the college, because most of the economic vibrance and dependency on the town has to do with the college and with the students. When there's that influx of students, there's an influx of business to all of the local businesses. If you look at rural campuses, there are not that many rural campuses. Think about what amenities you need to have near campus. Typically, a campus is standalone, which means you have everything you need on campus. And to some students, that's enough, and they don't really care what's off campus. Other students want to make sure they have access to other things off campus and other activities. And in that case, maybe a rural campus is not for you, because there's probably not going to be much to do off of campus if you're in a rural location. So think about setting: urban, suburban, small town, or rural. Again, keep an open mind. You may think you want to go to an urban school, but find a school in a small town that you love. And this is an evolutionary process, which is why we're having this presentation, because as you go through, you learn more about yourself and you learn more about the schools, and your list starts to grow and evolve. Let's talk about size. So the typical college size, it can range from about 1,000 students for small schools to 35,000 students for larger state schools. There are some colleges that are smaller than 1,000. There are some that are in the hundreds, or Caltech, for example, is about 880. And then there are some colleges, that are much larger than 35,000. The University of Central Florida is the largest college in the country, and it has 50,000 undergraduate students, if you can imagine. That is a huge, huge school. So something to think about. Do you want to attend a college that's larger, smaller, or the same size as your high school? Some of you go to quite large high schools. Maybe your high school has 1,000 students in each grade, and you have a total of 4,000 kids in your high school. Well, you may not want to go to a college with 2,500 students, because it may seem oppressively small since you're already accustomed to a much larger environment. On the other hand, you may feel that your high school is too large and you want a more intimate environment and would like to go to a school that's smaller than your high school. So something to really think about. Use your high school size as sort of a barometer to help you to fine tune size. If you feel like your school is so small that it's kind of oppressive and you know everyone and everyone knows everyone's business, you may want to go to a larger school and be able to mingle with more people, meet more people, really spread your wings. Think about what are your reasons for wanting to attend a large, medium, or small school. Sometimes it's just for personal comfort and a sense of security. If you want to go to a small school, you want to go to something that you may be accustomed to. Other students really like large schools because they feel like they're exposed to so many more students and so many more activities and more classes, and really love the concept of a large school full of school spirit, where you're never going to get to know everyone in your class because it's so big. And then there's that happy medium. Happy medium is about 3,500 or 4,000 to about 10,000 is about a medium-sized school. And those are typically in the private realm. So something to think about, that's sort of a good size for students who are flexible, don't want something too small, don't want something too large. Consider medium-sized schools, and there are quite a few of them out there. Typically private universities, where the larger schools tend to be public and state schools. So something else to think about when you're looking at a school and its size is the student to faculty ratio. And what this means is how many students there are for each faculty member in the university, for each undergraduate faculty member for the undergraduate part of the university. So the smaller the student to faculty ratio, the more access you're going to have to professors. Caltech, for example, I bring it up because it's an extreme. The student to faculty ratio at Caltech is 3 to 1, 3 students to 1 faculty member. That is pretty insanely small. Princeton is 5 to 1, again, incredibly small. Whereas other large state schools may have 50 to 1 or 20 to 1. I usually advise students to look at 20 to 1 or lower, ideally, so that you have some access to professors. Because if it gets too large, you're never going to know your professors. You won't be able to get to them in office hours because there will be too much demand. And you really want to make sure that you have access that you want when you want it. Something else to think about is, would you be comfortable in a large lecture hall with 100 plus or 200 or 250 students? Frequently at larger universities, that's how, and as we have this image here, that's how lectures are. And often they'll have a large lecture once a week and then 2 smaller breakout sessions that are seminar classes twice a week. So frequently a lecture class is held once a week and the entire course may not be lecture-based. So thinking about, do you like being anonymous in a large lecture, or would you rather be personal and one-on-one and involved in a smaller seminar-style class? Something else to look at in terms of size of university and student to faculty ratio. So these are all really important components of the driving criteria in selecting your school. Let's talk about majors. This is a really, really important and very broad topic. First of all, what are you interested in? Do you love math? Do you love science? Are you a humanities kid who's really into English and it works for the school paper and writes novels on the side? What classes do you excel in and enjoy? As well as what activities do you excel in and enjoy? You may be a STEM student. Science, technology, engineering, and math is what STEM stands for. And you're a kid who really enjoys those math classes and those intense science classes, and you're involved in robotics and science Olympiad and more math and science oriented activities. So you're going to look towards a STEM major because that's really going to be what you're drawn to naturally, since it's what you already have an interest in. On the other hand, if you're a humanities student and prefer English and history, and you're in Model United Nations, you're in other sort of history and philosophy related activities, you may go the other path away from STEM and go towards humanities. And the humanities include a broad variety of classes, everything from philosophy to even math can fall in the humanities. So even though math falls in STEM, it can also fall in the humanities. So you want to also talk with family and friends about their major and or career paths. See how they determined their major. See if they ended up following a career path in what they majored in. Many people, and I am one of those people, who majored in one thing but ended up having a long-term career in something else. I discovered education later in my life and fell in love with it, went back to school, got my degree in education, and have now been working for 15 years in education. And I did a variety of other jobs prior to that. So talk with family and friends about their major and career paths. You'll learn a lot about the evolution of people's major and careers, and know that the days of having one career for life are long gone. Many students, most people have multiple careers over the course of their life, just due to the nature of our changing world. Everything's changing so quickly that a job that you have one day may be obsolete the next month, and you'll have to grow with it and shift into a new area of work. Another way to get involved and figure this out is job shadowing or do an informal internship to sort of test drive a major or a career. Go in, if you think you want to go into business, spend some time working or shadowing someone in a small business or in a larger business and see what's involved in that career. You may find out that you love it, or you may find out that you really don't like it at all and that it's not what you thought. The same thing with medicine. I have some students who were convinced that they wanted to go into medicine, and then they went into hospitals and started shadowing doctors and found that they really didn't have the passion for it, or really in some cases the stomach for it, and realized that medicine was not for them. So there's nothing like real life experience via job shadowing or internships to give you a sense of your major or career choice, whether it's right or whether it's wrong. And it's equally important to figure out whether your choice is not right as it is to confirm your choice. We have a couple of different sites here that give you some great career tests. And these tests are fun because you may not have any idea as to what you would like to do, and these will help give you an idea. Or you may think, I absolutely want to go into education. And you take these career tests, and lo and behold, education comes up and you're right. Or other things come up that may make you consider other careers because it shows that you have an aptitude for them. So look into these career quizzes. They're a lot of fun. The results are always really interesting and allow you to broaden your horizons or confirm what you're already interested in. And here, this is really important. It is also okay to be undecided. 70% of students go to college undecided. You have 2 years to declare your major, so you have 2 years to figure it out, to take classes, to take your general education classes and electives, and dabble a little here and a little there in what you're interested in. Maybe you'll find a whole new area of interest. You have those first 2 years of college for 99% of schools until you declare your major at the end of sophomore year. There are some exceptions to that rule. If you're going to go into engineering, you need to declare that as your major on your application. If you're going into architecture, you need to do the same thing. Sometimes pre-med, some double majors, you need to declare in advance, or accelerated majors, but you can always change. So just know that just because you go into school with one major declared or undeclared, you have 2 years to really figure it out and change your major, or stay with the same major because maybe those 2 years will confirm that you made the right choice. Let's talk about campus culture. So there's a whole group of schools called specialty schools, single-sex schools. So it's sort of interesting that We're now at a point where there are about 31 all-female schools and only one all-male school left in the country. Don't know why, but all-male schools have sort of fallen by the wayside. Another type of specialty school is religious. Some schools have a lower key religious underpinning, whereas others are overtly religious. An example, Liberty University in Virginia is extremely religious, whereas Georgetown University, which is also a religious school, it's Jesuit, is much less religious. It's sort of an underpinning of the school, but it's not overtly religious. So that's something to look into when you're looking at schools that have any religious connection. How religious are they? HBCUs, historically Black colleges or universities, that's another section of specialty schools. We also have Hispanic serving institutions that are many universities in the country are called HSIs. They really cater towards Hispanic students. And then tribal colleges and universities, much more limited, typically on Native American reservations, and they're called TCUs, another specialty school. And there are not that many tribal colleges. However, something interesting that you don't have to be part of the tribe to go to a tribal college, which would be sort of an interesting experience. Do you want your school to be collaborative or do you want it to be competitive? More and more schools these days are collaborative, which means that students work together. Colleges tend not to grade on a curve because a curve encourages competition. And students work together in groups. That's sort of the wave of the future with colleges. However, there are still some schools that are very competitive, that grade on curves, and it's sort of dog eat dog, one person against the other, trying to get that higher grade. Some students thrive in that environment. Other students do not. Other students are all about collaboration and not about competition. But don't get me wrong, just because a school is collaborative does not mean that it is rigorous. It is not rigorous and that it is not very challenging. Collaborative schools can be incredibly challenging. It's just a style of teaching and learning. Do you want a school that has school spirit and strong traditions? Sometimes that school spirit may be just by virtue of the identity of the school, and everyone is so into the university that they're rah-rah about the school. Sometimes school spirit springs from sports. Athletics create a huge sense of school spirit. Some schools have very strong traditions, whether they're pledging Greek life, or some schools have secret societies. Some schools have traditions where they compete with other schools, like MIT and Caltech compete every year and try and play pranks on each other, even though they're on different sides of the country. So do you want a school that has school spirit and strong traditions? If so, that's something you can look into on the website, and also look into school reviews, college reviews, to see what the school spirit is like, what the feeling and sort of the ethos is on the campus. Another thing to consider in campus culture is your school conservative or progressive. Some students prefer conservative schools, and that is fine. Other students prefer more progressive schools, but just make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. And that, again, is something you can find on college websites and on college reviews. We have a fantastic book. It's the best 385 colleges this year. Rob Franick, our fantastic editor and writer, writes this book every year, and the number changes. My current edition is 385, and he talks about conservative versus progressive. He talks about all of these things in that book. Something else to look at is your school community service driven. So there's a term called service learning, and a school, for example, Clark University in Massachusetts, is a service learning school. What does that mean? It means that they directly connect the courses with community service in the college community, in the neighborhoods around the college. So if you're taking a class on maybe you're taking a math class and they want to encourage you to go to local elementary schools and tutor students. It's service learning. They combine community service with learning as part of the ethos and the belief of the school. It's part of their mission. You also want to consider in campus culture the student body diversity. So diversity is a huge, huge area. It can be socioeconomic, it can be geographic, it can be gender, race or ethnicity, which immediately people assume when you say diversity, it's race and ethnicity, but it's much more than that. Is it LGBTQIA plus friendly? So when we talk about these, socioeconomic, students from all different financial backgrounds. Do you want to go to a school that is so elite that it only has really wealthy kids? Or do you want to go to a school that has a cross section of students from a variety of socioeconomic backgrounds? Geographic, do you want to go to a school that's an in-state school that has mostly students from your state? Or do you want to go to a school that has students from all over the country and all over the world? That's something that's really important. And I can tell you, my daughter went to the University of Virginia and is from California. And University of Virginia, as with most public universities, is only 30% out of state, which means 70% of her classmates lived in Virginia. And it was kind of hard for her because they went home on weekends and she couldn't go back to California on weekends. So something to think about. Do you want a school that is primarily in state and you may be an out-of-state student, or do you want a school that has students from all over the place? Gender. Some schools are, even though they're co-ed, Georgia Tech, for example, 70% male, 30% female. So that does not have a huge amount of gender diversity. It's definitely male heavy. Something to look into. Ideally, most of you are going to want 50-50 to get that good balance. Race and ethnicity, people from all different racial and ethnic backgrounds, it adds to the richness of the school and to the richness of your experience on campus. You'll get to know people from all over, from all different backgrounds, learn about their heritage and their traditions, which is another part of college that you learn outside of the classroom. LGBTQIA plus friendly. Do you want to go to a school that is friendly to people of all sexual preferences and backgrounds and open-minded? That's going to be more of a progressive school. So things to look at when you're looking at student body diversity. Very, very important in campus culture. So let's talk about campus life. What campus safety measures are important to you? So an example of a campus safety measure is when I was at Cornell, we had something called the blue light system. And frequently I would be walking to and from class after dark. And any campus, no matter how safe it is, at night it can be a little scary and who knows what's going to happen. Well, the blue light system was a series of poles that was, they were located within a certain number of feet from each other throughout the campus, and each one of them had a button that you could push and call campus security. If you felt uncomfortable for any reason, you could call campus security, tell them you wanted a ride back to your dorm. They would come and get you, no questions asked, take you to your dorm. If you felt threatened for any reason, same thing. So campus safety measures, is there a good on-campus security presence? Is that important to you? Looking online and seeing what the crime stats are on the campus. Some campuses are incredibly safe. Other campuses, less so if they're in an intense urban environment. Sometimes it's because the urban environment may come into the campus, and sometimes they're not going to be as safe because you're just exposed to a much broader environment. Another thing that's important to many students is whether or not the school practices sustainability or has green initiatives. If you're into a sustainable lifestyle, you don't want to go to a school that doesn't recycle, that doesn't have buildings that are insulated and set up. LEED is the term for green buildings. If you're very, very committed to the environment, you want to have a school that is green, that has green initiatives. It's not going to be important to everyone, but it may be something that's really a driving factor for you in choosing your school. Something else is housing. Do you want guaranteed on-campus housing freshman year? I think this is very important. Some schools, most schools offer on-campus housing for freshman year. And many schools require on-campus housing for freshmen. Not all, but many. Other schools allow students, for example, Columbia, because it's in New York, it's very, very difficult to find housing in New York City. Columbia guarantees students on-campus housing for all 4 years. So some intense urban campuses will do that because they understand that it's difficult for students to find affordable housing off campus. So do you want to live on campus for all 4 years? Are there apartments adjacent to the college where you can live and walk back and forth? Or do you want to stay on campus for all 4 years? Do you have those opportunities? Something to look into in campus life. Something else, can freshmen have cars? Many universities prevent freshmen from having cars. It's for a variety of reasons. Part of it is, I think, a maturity issue, that they want to make sure that freshmen are there, they buckle down, they're not getting in their cars and driving away for every weekend and driving friends here and there, but that they're there to study for their first year. And there are always other means of transportation. There's public transportation, there's always Uber. You know, many cities have great rapid transit. So just because you don't have a car doesn't mean you're stuck on campus. Are you looking for a school with many dining options? And do you have dietary preferences or restrictions? Do you keep kosher? Do you want a campus that has a kosher cafeteria or dining area? Are you vegan? Do you want a school that has some vegan options? You know, many students these days have different eating requirements and preferences, and more colleges cater to those. Over the last 5 to 10 years, the options on campus in terms of dining have just exploded, so that pretty much everyone can find what they want in their dining halls on campus. So that's campus life. Educational opportunities, let's talk about those. So co-op programs, what a co-op program is, there are probably a handful, maybe 12 to 15 colleges in the country that offer co-op programs. Northeastern is one, Drexel is one, University of Cincinnati is one. What a co-op program is you go to college for a year, and then you take a semester where you go and work. And you work in a company where the college sets you up with the job. So you take the equivalent of a semester off, or some students will do it over the summer, where they'll work in their area of study. And then they'll come back to school again. And then maybe the next summer or another semester or two, they'll go and work again. And then they'll come back. Frequently, they'll work at the same company multiple times, and they end up graduating with the job because they have real life experience. Other times, if the first company isn't a great fit, they'll work for a variety of companies and get that hands-on real life experience while they're in college. So that's what a co-op program is. And it does not make you graduate late, because schools work it out so that you don't lose a semester when you're in the co-op. Again, sometimes it's in the summer, they always work it out so that you can still graduate within 4 years and do the co-op. Honors colleges. These are typically in large public universities. And what an honors college is it makes a big school smaller. You typically have to apply for an honors college in the application process. Some schools wait until you're accepted and then you apply for the honors college. Typically, honors colleges offer early registration for students, frequently smaller class sizes, often honors college dorms, so that you can live with other serious students who are not playing football in the hallway at 4 a.m. Honors college dorms have great study areas, will have study sessions, and sometimes smaller class sizes. So really, an honors college is something that large schools do to attract high achieving students, and it makes a large school smaller. So it's almost a school within a school. Another educational opportunity is undergraduate research. And that's something you should look up in your research on schools' websites and see if you have access to undergraduate research. Not all schools are undergraduate research friendly. Some are, some have incredible programs. The University of Michigan has a specific undergraduate research program that guarantees that any undergrad who wants to get into research has access to it. Other schools may be more open and you just sort of have to hunt for your own research opportunity and may have more emphasis on graduate research. So as an undergrad, if you want to research, if you want to work in research, it's something that is really important. You look into on the website and you look into in college reviews. Another educational opportunity that 99% of schools offer now is study abroad. It's become a very common opportunity. And typically you'll take a semester, usually first semester junior year, you'll study abroad. Again, you get college credit. You don't lose any time in college. You still graduate on time, but you study abroad. Sometimes schools have satellite universities, their own schools in other countries, or you'll go to a school that has an affiliate that's affiliated with your college, but is a different university. So when I was at Cornell, Syracuse had the best study abroad program. So when I went to Florence to study, I actually went through Syracuse rather than through Cornell. But when I came back, I did not lose a semester of Cornell credit. I got the full credit from Syracuse and it transferred directly to Cornell. So some study abroad programs are with your school, some are with affiliated schools. Does your school offer double majors, minors, or specialty programs? So double majors, it really varies from school to school. And what a double major means is you get 2 degrees and you get them ideally in 4 years. So it means you have to take the prerequisites and the requirements for 2 different degrees. Ideally, they'll be related somehow so that a lot of the prerequisites and requirements will overlap. If they're very different and have very little in common, it may take you another year to graduate with a double major. But ideally, you're going to find 2 majors that have a lot of overlap. Minors, not all schools allow students to have minors. Again, something you'll find on their website and something you may or may not be interested in. You may just want to focus on your major and just take other classes rather than have an official minor. Specialty programs. Some of the specialty programs are BSMD programs, which are accelerated medical school programs where students go to undergraduate school and then go directly into medical school from undergrad, either with an affiliated university or at the same university. Some other schools have 3+3 programs where you're in an engineering program for undergrad for 3 years and graduate program. And in 6 years, you have 2 degrees. You have your graduate degree and your undergraduate degree. You also frequently want to know, particularly if you're a student with learning differences, what student support services are offered. Do they offer accommodations for students with learning differences? They legally have to, but there are all different degrees of accommodations. Some schools will offer the bare minimum. Other schools have really robust student support programs. So if you're a student who has learning differences, this is critical that you research the student support services. And if you have the opportunity to tour the campus, absolutely meet with student support, make an appointment in advance, get to know them, see how involved they are, and if they're really committed to your success. Career services. Every college has a career services department. Some are more effective than others, and this again is something you can learn through reviews. Career services will help you put a resume together, will help you find summer jobs, will help you find your ultimate job after graduation. Career Services also is the organization that sponsors different college recruiting fairs where companies come to the university to recruit. Alumni organizations. Does a school have a robust alumni organization? That can be really critical because alumni love to hire students from their college. So if it has a very strong alumni association, you can rest assured that they're going to be recruiting kids who are graduating from their school. Let's talk about campus involvement. So are there any activities that you are involved in now that you'd like to continue in college? That's something that you can look up on the school's website, see what activities they have, and if your activity will continue, or if there's a new one. If you have an intended major or area of study, what clubs on campus will help you expand this interest? So if you're a STEM student, is there a STEM related club? In engineering, if you're a female in engineering, do they have a women in engineering club? You really want to see what else you can do besides just study. You want to have involvement with clubs and organizations, and it will help you to meet other students who have similar interests. Are you interested in playing college sports? So collegiate versus intramural. Collegiate is division 1, 2, and 3. Intramural, sports that anyone can play. And every school has intramurals, and a lot of kids have a lot of fun in intramurals. Are you interested in Greek life, sororities and fraternities? Is your school very Greek oriented? Some schools have a huge Greek orientation, and maybe that's not for you. Maybe you are not interested in Greek life and don't want to go to a school that has a big Greek orientation. On the other hand, maybe you absolutely want to get involved in Greek life and really want a school that has a big Greek community. How about military ROTC programs? Something else to look into in campus involvement. Finances. So how will finances impact your college decision? Need blind versus need aware schools. Need blind means admissions does not know that you're applying for financial aid, and financial aid does not factor into your admissions decision. Need aware schools means that admissions does know whether or not you're applying for financial aid, and that need may impact your acceptance at the university based on how much money the university has to give out and to go around. Is the school generous with merit and financial aid? There's a whole list of schools that are generous with merit aid and financial aid. Merit aid is aid that is given to students who are high achieving, and not all schools offer merit aid. You want to see, it's not something you apply for. When you're accepted to a university, if you're a high achieving student, typically they'll discount their tuition by giving you merit aid, and it comes with your acceptance letter. Tuition exchange programs. Some states offer in-state tuition with neighboring states, which is called a tuition exchange program. So you'll get in-state tuition with the state next to you as well as your state. So, and in-state versus out-of-state tuition, I overlooked. Definitely less expensive in-state tuition versus out-of-state tuition, frequently more than double for a student to be an out-of-state student in a state school. So something to look at and something to discuss with your family. So I've covered more than we could possibly consider. Let's look at some questions that may have come in.
Thanks, Julia. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you so much for presenting. We haven't had too many questions come in so far, just a handful. So I'm going to give people a second and maybe let them submit some questions. Yes, grab yourself a drink of water.
Very dry talking.
Yeah, so I'll give everybody a second to send in some questions. I will give you one to start that came in throughout. The question is, how do you determine if a college you are interested in has courses or majors related to the career path that you're interested in?
You go on their website, you look up majors. Every school will have, on their homepage, they'll have academics. You can click on academics. It will have majors and minors. Click on that. Once you click on the major that you're interested in, typically it will have a section that has curriculum. And you can look at the courses that are offered. It both will include the courses that are required as well as elective opportunities. So that's all on the school website.
Perfect. Another question that came in that's a little bit off topic from tonight, but we haven't had a lot of questions, so definitely we'll send it out there and let you answer it, is outside of a high GPA and test score, how does one actually get into an Ivy League college?
Well, Ivy League colleges, for one thing, there are many, many, many more schools in the country beyond the Ivy League colleges. So how does one get into an Ivy League college? There is no magic formula. I can tell you that highly selective colleges, not just Ivy League schools, because believe it or not, there are some schools that are more selective than the Ivies. The number one thing they look at is the rigor of your curriculum in high school. How much have you been pushing yourself? Have you taken the most challenging classes possible? They look at your GPA. They look at your involvement in activities. If you're looking at a specific major that requires something called demonstrated interest, like engineering, for example, they want to see that you've done engineering related activities, STEM related activities in high school. So you also need to have community service. So there's no magic formula to get into an Ivy. You just have to do the best you can, work the hardest you can, and that's all that you can do. Make sure you're involved and then apply. And my philosophy about any of the highly selective schools is if you don't apply, you won't get in. So don't talk yourself out of it. However, don't only apply to Ivies, because as I said, there are many, many, many more schools. There are over 1,500 schools in the country, and there is a world beyond the Ivies.
Perfect. Can you speak a little bit about first generation students in their college research process? Do you have any recommendations for them?
Sure. For many first generation students, there may be community-based organizations that are like Gear Up and different organizations that may come to their high school and help them with the process. So that's something to look into. Go to your college counseling office or your advisor and see what sort of support your high school has for first generation students who are going to college. Colleges will frequently also have guidance for what we call first gen students. And it can definitely give you a boost in your application process if you're a high achieving first generation student, because colleges look and see that you've had no example laid out for you through your family, and you've been doing this on your own, of course, with the support and love of your family, but you've been doing this on your own and succeeded without any previous example. So colleges really look fondly upon that. And first gen students really get some excellent opportunities, because colleges understand how hard it is to start from scratch to apply to the college in the college process.
Awesome. On a same question, but different group of students, do you have any recommendations for international students in the college research process, or kind of defining their criteria?
So international students, I would look on the college websites and see what percentage of international students attend the university. That will give you a sense of the percentage that they accept. If you need financial aid, you definitely need to go on the school's website and see if they offer financial aid to international students. Some schools do, some schools don't. You also need to see, for example, if English is not your first language, you have to take something called the TOEFL, the test of English as a first language. And it's a test that proves that you are proficient and fluent in English. So depending on where you're from, what your heritage is, if you speak English or not, there are different processes that you have to go through as an international student.
Thank you. What advice would you give to a high school senior who's undecided in their major, but wants to figure out the best way to look for a major before applying to college?
I think you should get involved in clubs and activities, a wide variety of clubs and activities. And as I mentioned in the presentation, if you have some courses that you just love, that excite you, use that as a clue and follow that instinct. If you love math and it just comes naturally to you, consider majoring in something that has to do with math. So there are many, many ways to develop a major. And remember, you don't have to know before you go to college. But when you're in high school, explore as much as possible with clubs and activities, with courses. Spend your summer doing different activities or internships that expose you to a variety of fields, and you'll find what you love, or you may still not be sure and go to school undecided, which is absolutely fine.
Perfect. We did have a question come in that I'll just address briefly about websites and resources for researching schools. We are going to do a part 2 and part 3 of this series to address some of those questions. So I'm going to hold off on answering that question. You guys can join us next Thursday to learn a little bit more about that. Outside of that, most of the questions that came in were not quite on topic with today's presentation, but we did have quite a few questions about scholarships. So let me see if I can kind of phrase these together. Do you have just any general recommendations on where to look for scholarships or how to research scholarships, whether that's need-based or merit-based?
So the first place I would look for a scholarship is at the university that you're applying to. Many of them will list scholarships in the application. That's your first stop. Then the College Board has a great resource for scholarships. Federal Student Aid, which is FSA, also has some great scholarship resources. I'm not a big fan of the FastWebs and the CapExes and the sort of mass scholarship websites that bombard you with $100, $200, $300 scholarships. It's really is better to spend your time and energy focusing on higher value scholarships. Also, depending on your background, if you're a low income student and high achieving, there are many, many scholarships that are available for low income students. And that's something you can Google, scholarships for low income college students, and a whole list will come up. So Google is your friend. Between looking on the school website and Googling and looking on FSAID as well as the College Board, there are many other sites, but I think those are the best.
To add to that, since one of the questions was specifically about finding scholarships when you haven't chosen a school, I will add that speaking with your high school counselor and looking at local scholarships is also a great option. So use your high school guidance or college counselor, talk to them, even if you haven't met them yet, you feel like you don't know them. They should be a great resource for you moving forward in high school. So definitely start building that relationship with them now.
Absolutely.
Let's see. We had a question come in. We're almost out of time, but let's go ahead and answer this last question. A little bit different veering from tonight's topic, but that's fine. What kind of community service are colleges looking for?
Colleges are looking for continuity, consistency, and commitment. They want to see that you are involved in your school community, in your local community, and that you're not just doing a travel abroad and help build a school in another country. They want to see, that's a short term. They want to see an ongoing commitment to community service, whether it's tutoring, whether it's fundraising, whether it's participating in a variety of service activities. They want to see that you're committed to community service from freshman year through senior year, and that it's not just spotty, that you have an ongoing commitment. Community service is a critical part of the college process.
Perfect. I'm going to add one more question. You can stay on this slide though, Julia, because this one that just came in is directly related to our topic tonight. Okay. Any suggestions or advice for finding colleges for students that are homeschooled? Does that make a difference when you're researching schools and kind of defining your criteria?
No, actually, the only difference it makes is sometimes in the application process, homeschooled students have to do a few different steps in the application process. So colleges do not discriminate against homeschool students by any means, and more students are homeschooled these days with COVID. So what you should do is look on the website, on the admissions page of the website, and see if there are any specific requirements for homeschooled students in the application process.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. We are going to end it with questions there. Just to give you guys a heads up, we do offer college admissions counseling programs. Julia Moody is one of our counselors on staff. So if you liked hearing from her tonight and you're interested in meeting with her, go ahead and give us a call or check out our website. We would love to work with you. And Julia, if you want to hit the next slide, I just want to give one more shout out to, this is part 1 in a 3-part series about building your college list and researching colleges. So we are going to tackle 2 more topics moving forward. We're going to meet again next Thursday at the same time, and then the Thursday after Thanksgiving, same time again. So we would love for you guys to join us and learn a little bit more about researching schools and rounding out your college list. So we hope to see you in the future, and thank you guys so much. Thank you, Julia, for presenting.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you everyone for joining us this evening, for taking your time out to learn.